I took 8 years of piano lessons and I hated it. It turned out to be pretty rote and pretty just grinding against the wheels of tradition and trying so hard to invigorate myself with love and joy of playing music. But I couldn't find it because I was playing boring pieces of music. Cut to 5 years later, I'm pretty much able to sight read any piece of musical theater written piece of music. That's because my parents had just so much musical theater. So yeah, here I am now, a professional pianist. I play at a couple places here in LA.
Hi, Patrick. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Fantastic. Better that you're here because I am excited to talk to you. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I must start by asking you, what does peak performance mean to you?
Peak performance means to me, as a creative, first, it means that you're able to drop into flow pretty quickly and mistakes happen, but you don't care about them. You're consummate, you're a very professional, and so you're able to just go. And people love what you're offering. You're performing at the height of your talents. And regardless of the amount of mistakes that you make, it doesn't really even matter because people still love what you're bringing. As an entrepreneur, I think peak performance to me means constantly pushing the boundaries of innovation, always wanting to grow and improve oneself. Self-motivation is extremely important in entrepreneurship, in my opinion. I think that always being motivated to grow is the biggest thing when it comes to being an entrepreneur, in my opinion.
Getting to that flow state when playing an instrument, is that something that is easily achieved?
With the right tools, I think it is. If you were taught a certain way, I think it is. If you have the certain mindset, I think it is. But a lot of those things are not ingrained in most performers. You do have to learn how to do it. Flow doesn't come, it's weird, right? In our traditional ways of teaching music, flow is not really a part of it. And that's what my company is trying to reinvent. We're trying to put flow specifically at like the core of being able to learn a piece, an instrument, right? I don't think it comes naturally with our traditional methods of teaching, but with the right tools, I think it can easily come.
Your early experiences with traditional piano lessons were very uninspiring. What do you think was missing from that approach? And how did your self directed learning ignite your passion for music and then going on to create this app? We're going to talk about it in a minute.
Yeah, I took 8 years of piano lessons and I hated it. I got into it thinking it was going to be a very inspiring journey, but it turned out to be pretty rote and pretty just grinding against the wheels of tradition and trying so hard to invigorate myself with love and joy of playing music. But I couldn't find it because I was playing boring pieces of music. I was having to repeat them over and over and over to boredom and to uninspiring pieces as well. My teacher, of course, gave me songs to practice that exercised one specific skill that I needed to learn. That's how piano pedagogy is created, right? At least the traditional way. And I had to do that over and over, but I did not enjoy the process of it, man. And so I barely got anywhere in 8 years, barely got anywhere. And then my teacher retired, no fault of my own. He just retired and he didn't leave me. He didn't say, Pat, you're terrible.
You broke him.
I broke him.
He just retired. He's like that.
He said he retired, but in reality, no, he quit me. No. Randy Balkis, love the guy. Shout out to him. He was fantastic. He retired. And so I stepped away from the piano for a very long time. And then I went back to just opening my parents' sheet music and flipping through the pages, finding little phrases that I liked. I gravitated towards those. Closed the book. And then I just started playing those phrases. I put them in different musical contexts. I improvised around them, put it in the left hand, put it in the right hand, put it in different keys. I inverted them. I transposed them. I completely reinvented them. And then when I went back to another piece of music, this is the crazy part. When I went back to another piece of music that had that phrase in it, I was able to play it verbatim, no problem. That's because I learned it in a very untraditional way. Right? I didn't learn it in one specific context. I learned it in a multitude of contexts. And so that's what I just kept doing. I just kept finding these phrases that I loved, picked and choose these phrases that I really enjoyed, learned them in the context of music that I already knew. I combined them. I just kept reinventing them, right? And then cut to 5 years later, I'm pretty much able to sight read any piece of musical theater written piece of music. That's because my parents had just so much musical theater. So yeah, here I am now, a professional pianist. I play at a couple places here in LA. And yeah, that different way of learning, that self-taught version, I wanted to try to replicate for people. And that's what the app is all about. That's what it does. It teaches you in that very flow state, creative, inspiring way.
You're the creator of Museflow, which has been called the Duolingo of music education. Explain to us how sight reading fits into the process of skill acquisition in Museflow. Tell us a little bit more deeply about why you think this approach is the better approach than the traditional repetitive practice that you went through.
Let's talk about the theory first, okay? The theory of skill acquisition. There's so many different ways that you can acquire a skill. And we believe, especially in music performance, that there are two thresholds. One is what piece of music, how difficult a piece of music can you play at first sight? Meaning you have no practice, it's just right down in front of you and you just play it. The other one, the threshold, is what can you play with an indefinite, not an infinite, but an indefinite amount of practice. You will attain playing it perfectly at some point, but what piece of music is that? Traditional lessons, we focus on the top threshold. We focus on practicing one skill in one context, repeating that process over and over, which only perfects that top threshold. And then what we've realized is that if that gap widened enough, your ability to play a piece of music at first sight, the lower threshold, and your ability to play a piece of music with indefinite amount of practice at the top threshold, if that gap widens too much, joy of learning and joy of playing diminishes. So with that theory in mind, we want to raise that bottom threshold. And we want to do it in an engaging way. We want to do it in a fun way for you. And we think flow state is the right way to do it. So the way that we've applied that theory to music education, skill acquisition, is by giving you one skill. Here's a new note, a new rhythm, a new time signature, a new key signature, whatever it may be, right? Here's a new skill. Let's practice it in music that you already know. We can start you from one note, or we can start you from wherever your skill level lies, right? Let's drop you there and let's practice that one new skill in that context. An infinite amount of music is generated by Museflow that it never repeats, and it's always changing. And so you're having to play it at first sight. And we've gamified it. So you have to get 95% accuracy at the goal tempo, goal pace, with 4 phrases in a row. And 4 phrases is a certain amount of music. We got 4 measures. Music is broken down into phrases, measures, and then notes, right? And then beats and all that stuff, right? So we've labeled it as 4 phrases of music in a row at 95% accuracy at the goal tempo. And there you go. You've successfully, according to us, mastered that new skill in a multitude of contexts, because it's not just one specific song. It's music that keeps reinventing itself and keeps adjusting to how you're doing, right? And so that is how we've applied learning the bottom threshold. And then once you've mastered that new skill, songs get unlocked in the repertoire library, the song library in Museflow. And then you can go apply the new skill that you've learned into those songs. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing with Museflow. And yeah, we want you to enjoy playing and learning. We want you to enjoy learning. And so yeah, we focus on that bottom threshold.
Obviously, with Museflow, we're focusing on bite-sized skills like notes and rhythms, and it's helping the student learn those smaller units. That's helping them progress to be able to be more complex pieces. But how does the student adjust the complexity and the tempo of the music? And why is this flexibility important? What does the app do to keep them motivated without overwhelming them, which happens in the traditional format of music learning?
Yeah, you can personally adjust the tempo and the pace of the song. You can personally find where your challenge meets the skill level within the curriculum. We're going to be automating all these things later on. But right now, you're the one that's in charge of where you start and how fast you started at. We noticed that so many people with the repertoire library, the repertoire section, they immediately they pass a level and then they go to the piece that gets unlocked, or one of the pieces that gets unlocked. Usually about 5 per level get unlocked. And so you click on that and you go to it, and it's faster than what you've been playing in the sight reading trainer, because we still want you to be challenged by the pieces of repertoire. So they have to lower that tempo to then incrementally increase it. The accuracy is being counted right there at the top there. And you notice if you're in the green, if you're like right there at 95% accuracy, notch it up, man. Keep going. Because again, once you get to the tempo that is set for that song and you play it correctly, straight through, you've successfully mastered that piece. Later on, we'll require 3 times to play through for you to complete it. Because of course, repetition is very important when you're learning a song. But when it comes to skill acquisition, you really just need to do it in a certain amount of context. And there you go. Now you've mastered it, right? So yeah, what was the question?
You answered it.
Okay, great.
So learning technical skills, one thing, sight reading, another thing. But one of the challenges that you faced was your trouble with the creativity aspect of things. You wanted to be able to improvise because that kept you interested,
Yeah.
right? In your
Yeah.
musical journey. So the technical skills we understand, the sight reading we understand, but how is the app helping with the fostering the creativity and improvisation for students when they're using the app?
What we've noticed with a lot of people that are using the sight reading trainer is that they're deciding in the moment how to play those phrases. We're not telling you how to play them. We're just saying, technically speaking, you need to play those notes correctly to be able to pass the level, right? But we have some students that they've already mastered our entire curriculum. Right now, we only have 26 levels, but that gets you pretty darn far. That gets you 2 octaves, 14 notes, 4 different rhythms, 3 different time signatures. Like, it's a lot, right? To be able to sight read at that level is really difficult. But we do have some people that have mastered that so far. And what they do, they're still subscribed. What's cool, we have no churn. We're very lucky and honored to be able to say that, right? That nobody has unsubscribed so far. The people that have completed our curriculum so far, though, what they do is they just want to find flow. They're there so that they can just play an indefinite amount of music, just keep going and just keep reinventing those phrases. So what they do is they notch down the tempo by 1 beat per minute so they can't pass the level. And then they just play the music that is there in front of them. And they just keep going and they crescendo, they decrescendo, they play it staccato. They manipulate that in however they're inspired to want to play that, because they're seeing it, they're playing it, and it changes as they go, and they're just constantly in flow and inspired to play these phrases in different ways. Don't believe, though, I do want to say this, we don't want our app to replace teachers. No, our app is here to teach you the technical skills, but it's up to the teacher or the user to learn why they're playing and to learn how. We can teach you how and what, right? But the why behind it, why are you deciding to crescendo there? Why are you deciding to decrescendo there? What a part of the piece makes you want to do that? Now that is the joy of playing music, those decisions, and then applying those decisions, right? What we did in my clarinet lessons when I was younger was I learned all the pieces, pretty technically proficient, and then I brought them to my teacher. And then we decided together how I was going to play those pieces. Now that is such a joy when it comes to a teacher and a user. That's the love. That's the humanity of music. We never want to take that away. We never want this to be a rote thing. Yes, you can play it technically. Great. But what about the humanity? What about the why? That's where the human connection really comes into play.
Even when it comes to technical mastery, my old piano teacher, Oksana, will say that, yeah, Patrick is creating this adaptive learning AI technology with his app, but it's not the real thing. Oksana was very strict. It's an old Ukrainian way of learning music. And she's going to say, you're not going to be able to do that with AI. What are you going to tell to skeptics like her?
I think you're right. We can increase the threshold of your technical proficiency that is needed in Museflow. We can absolutely do that. Again, we can teach you how to play technically proficient, okay? We can be the ruler on your hand saying, no, do it again. No, do it again. No, do it again. We can do that if you want it. But again, I'm not here to replace humans. We're not here to replace the humans when it comes to teaching. We think it's extremely important. And again, I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures of AI humans, like you give the computer like 6 images of yourself, and then it generates like 200 different images of you. There was like some app out there. I forgot the name of it. Some app that did that recently. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, I created some fake photos of mine. My wife said I look too handsome in them. It's
Yeah.
not you.
I don't know if
The real one is more ugly.
And that's what she loves, right? That's what she loves. She loves the
I
imperfection.
guess. I never thought of it that way.
I don't know if you think about, you ever notice, look at the eyes of an AI generated human, and there is no soul. An AI can't generate the soul of a human, at least yet. But we're not here to talk about the future of AI. We're just talking about the application of music education, right? The soul of playing piano, you can't teach that without a human. And you can't experience that without being human. So we're not trying to replace it that way. We are trying to replace the boring parts of teaching music. The technique of teaching, the technique of playing an instrument, we want teachers to be able to outsource to Museflow the teaching of technique so that in their lessons, they can focus on musicianship, which is how you play it.
You've been featured on many podcasts discussing topics like Sondheim musicals and the future of learning. You're an ed tech startup right now. You're revolutionizing the way creative skill is learned using technology, especially AI. How do you integrate creativity with the technical side of such an innovation?
That's a good question. You mean me, myself? How do I integrate my own creativity into my startup? I care deeply about the creative process and iteration. I think iteration is very important, which I think also that lines up so perfectly with any sort of software startup. The iterative process, the agile method. You start off starting with just a solid POC, proof of concept. You move on to a minimum viable product. Right. And then you start adding more and more features, gathering more customers, integrating their feedback. That process of iteration is fairly similar to the creative process of, say, learning a script. The technical aspect of learning a script is the memorization. You got to memorize those lines first. The second part is iterating on those lines, doing them differently all over the place. Change up the pace, change up the context of what you're saying it in, change up the accent, do it in a Southern accent, do it in a British accent. You'll find new things, right? That's the iterative process. And then the human element is the why. Why are you saying these things? What's the connection between the other human and you that you're speaking back and forth these lines, right? That's the creative process of learning like text for a TV or a movie or a theater play. That is very similar to the edtech startup sort of method of iteration and agile. Yeah.
The gamifying of the app obviously enhances the students' engagement. What about long-term retention skills? Have you noticed any effect on those?
Long-term retention skills as in,
Whatever they're learning.
oh yeah, it's ingrained, it's embodied by the end of the level that they've learned, whatever skill that is, it is inside of them so thoroughly. This is why I was able to go back to multiple pieces of music and find and identify those phrases that I had iterated on over and over, playing them in different contexts. I was able to identify those and then just replicate them immediately, right? It's when you embody a skill that way, when you truly digest it from that perspective, and then later down the road, you can identify that skill and do it just like that. That's the problem with traditional lessons, is because they only put it in one context. We put it in all of these contexts so that you're truly in the skill. So that years later, if it pops up somewhere in your songs that you're playing, you'll be able to play that. It is quite incredible. I don't know the scientific parts of it from going from short term to long term, but I think there's something that we don't really know yet that's about embodying, putting it in your hands, not just in your mind, but like in your body. There's something about that. Like, why do you, when you weight lift, how do you know how to do a deadlift? It's because you've embodied it, right? So I think that's something that we can all start working on together in the neuroscience aspect of like skill acquisition, embodying the skill.
As a devil's advocate, I'm a traditional teacher. Not only I teach technical skills, but I also focus on the form, because I'm making sure the student is not just playing today. The student is developing posture, hand position, head position, all these positions, so that tomorrow and day after and for months and years later, they can continue to play. When I'm learning through an app, I don't have a personal teacher who's looking at my posture. Injuries plague musicians, destroys careers. How does this fit into your vision for the app, and where do you see it going with students using it?
This goes all the way down the road, right? We've talked about AR. We've talked about, I think it was you actually that brought it up, a wristband that can track the finger movements. I'm obsessed with that idea because we were like, okay, like fingering is a whole thing, right? You've got to be able to play the song with certain fingerings. It's inevitable that you're going to come across a problem in a song where fingering is not marked and you're going to flub it. How do we as an app be able to tell you're playing it wrong? Right. We do put the fingering that whenever there's a piece of music that comes up, whether it's a phrase or a piece of repertoire, that there is only one way to play it. Books do this as well. They put the fingering above the note. But if we notice that you're screwing that up over and over, you're messing up that one specific moment, we can give you more phrases that exercise that one specific moment because we recognize the pattern on the back end that you're messing this one specific skill up, right? This one specific interval, this one specific note pattern. We can give you more phrases to exercise that problem. Later down the road, we're going to start having prompts that pop up saying, hey, focus on this. We'll stop the whole program. We're planning on automating all of this, right? We'll stop the whole thing and we'll say, hey, you're messing this one specific thing up, work on that. And then we'll just go into an exercise that specifically works that one bar. Is another perfect example. We love the idea of getting us into a virtual reality AR situation where you put on your goggles and you're in front of the keyboard and you're just playing the music that shows up in the air, and it can see your hands. It can see above, it can see below, it can see all around because the cameras in these new virtual reality goggles it's quite wide. They have so many different cameras, right? So they can actually hit your hands. And so we can recognize, okay, are you too close? Are you hunching over? Are you too far up? Are you sitting close? Are you sitting far enough on your chair that it's comfortable? We can see all of that, your posture at that point. We can see your fingering at that point, and then we'll adjust the program accordingly. So that's definitely farther down the road when we start talking about AR and we start talking about recognizing like finger patterns. Oh, you were talking about that bracelet, that neuroscience bracelet, that we can or maybe this was somebody else. We can recognize what finger you're using by putting like sensors on your wrist. And we can recognize, okay, that finger just by sensing the wrist. And so that's another thing that we're thinking about later down the road is let's invent a piece of technology that can recognize, okay, you're now using these fingers. There will be a calibration, of course. And then you would just wear these bracelets when you're playing. And then we can truly recognize like what fingers you're using.
Being an ed tech startup, especially in a field like music, musicians are not perhaps, definitely the most creatively talented, underpaid people in the world. Probably after that is teachers, 100%.
Thanks for thinking that.
Yes, but then also musicians are also very traditional and stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
This is the way things have been done. This is the way things have to be done. And it comes from old teachers. They don't let go of the ways they teach. Being in this interesting space of ed tech startup, but challenging traditional norms. So, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you have encountered from people when you're talking about AI in education? Can you tell us some stories?
Biggest thing, first and foremost, is that people think we're coming after teachers' jobs. We're not. We want to work with teachers. I already can imagine how a choir would be taught with our method, right? But again, it's just outsourcing the technique of actually singing the song, actually playing the piece of music. It's outsourcing the teaching of that technique so that you as the teacher can focus on the joy of teaching, which is the musicianship, right? Which is how you're playing the piece. That's the biggest misconception that we've got so far. Institutions are extremely entrenched in the traditional ways of teaching. Again, we're not here to take away teachers' jobs. We're just here to be an accompaniment to your teaching pedagogy, your methods, right? So that you can focus on what brings you joy as the teacher and what brings the students joy. You become their coach instead of their teacher, right? It is very difficult to wrap your head around that, especially when you've been teaching in an institution that's been teaching this way for, gosh, thousands of years, right? This is the way that music has been taught for thousands of years. That's extremely hard to penetrate, and that's extremely hard to disrupt. But here we are with a whole new piece of technology, and it's never been done before. I say give it a chance, see if you like it. And if you don't, tell me. I'm so curious to hear what you think. And if you hate it, if you love it, I want your feedback. We want your feedback. We're working on this thing for you, for the people that are using this. And all of our early adopters are telling us what they love, telling us what they hate, and we are integrating that into our development roadmap. And that goes so deeply for the institutions and the teachers, the private teachers. That is one of the biggest roadblocks for sure. But we're planning on being here for a while. We're not going anywhere. And our B2C right now is pretty cool. People are loving it. We're excited to go for the B2B. A little bit later, probably around next year or the year after, we'll really start locking in some private teachers, see if they want to use it as a sight reading trainer, as an accompaniment to their.
If I'm listening to this podcast and I'm wondering, wow, this is a great app, but I don't know if I should be using this. I don't know who this app is for. Can you just simply state who should be using this app, Patrick?
Anybody that's interested in finding joy in the process of learning, especially an instrument. Yeah, like an instrument. We're making skill acquisition and learning an instrument very fun, engaging, and more effective than the here's one skill, go learn that one song perfectly, and then come back, we'll check it off, that sort of way. It's more effective when you're bodying the skill itself, right? So we would say anybody who's interested in self-learning and anybody who's interested in learning how to play an instrument or learning how to get better at playing your instrument in a fun, engaging way. A lot of our users are self-starters, and a lot of our users are people that find joy in flow state. Some of our users play this 30 minutes a day after work to unwind. Instead of watching TV, they'll play Museflow, and to drop into flow state for that long is a release. It's a relief. It's relaxing. So I guess it's hard to pin down who, but it's self-starters for now.
So many times we come across a product, we come across a story, and we think, how come I didn't think of this? And there's so much frustration. And you always wonder what would have been like if I was like 1980 something and I bought the full share at $1.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
What would have happened if I would have bought the Facebook shirt at $1?
I know.
How come I didn't think of this product called Scrub Daddy, which is just a scrubbing thing with a smiley face, and it became a multi-million dollar business?
What? Yeah, okay.
Look it up. This is one of those. I think it is inevitable how it's going to change the way music is taught. Whether there be Olgas and Oksanas out there who don't want AI to be integrated into this, is just like a computer coming out and typewriting people still fighting for the typewriter to be alive. No. When the car came out, the horse buggy went out of the way. I don't think that it will ever replace human teachers. What it's going to end up doing, it's going to be a perfect companion for the human teacher. I think it's going to be better for teachers because they're going to be able to use technology to supplement their teaching skills. I think it is better going to be for students because they are not only going to be able to use it with their teachers, but also on their own when they're self-learning. Because there are many types of students. Some students, like you said, are just looking to unwind, just looking to get better. They are not at a place where they want to invest time and go to a teacher that takes time out of their day.
And
Having
money.
an app and money. Having an app, a cost-effective app on your phone, I think definitely this is the way to go. I can't wait for 5 years from now when this app has become a top thing to come back to this conversation and see how we talked about it at this basic infancy. It's amazing. It's amazing to talk
Thanks,
to
man.
you, to talk about this product. Any last words for our audience members?
No, we've talked a lot about people that have how this can be a company for teachers. But again, right now we're really focused on our business to consumer model. And it is just simply that. It is an app that you can, and we do have a little bit of a barrier to entry right now. You got to use it on your computer. You have to use it in a browser, Chrome specifically. You have to have a MIDI keyboard that connects to your computer. We're building the app. We're building audio recognition so that you can use it with acoustic pianos. That's all going to be later. But right now, there is a market for people that are willing to throw their computer up on their piano, on their MIDI keyboard, and use it on their desk or use it on their keyboard. Right. You have to unfortunately go through all that process. Right. So the barriers to entry is a little high right now. We are working on that, but it is exciting to build an app and to have an app that can teach you how to play piano and apply those skills to pieces of repertoire and game in a very gamified way. Yeah, it's a different way of teaching. It's a different way of learning. And we're excited to have that as an opportunity for you to try. We've given you guys a discount code, Mark50. It gives you 50% off for the rest of your life on Museflow. And of course, we're going to be increasing our prices as we go along. But right now, that gets you $3.99 a month or $39.89 a year. So I say get in at the ground floor. That's what I say. That's why we're giving you the code, giving your audience the code. But yeah, we're excited to hear what you guys think.
Certainly. Thank you so much for being on the show, Patrick. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.